Today, we're going to ask the question, what if, more than you've ever asked it before. Let's start with Xavier 25. What if Six Flags actually went bankrupt and shut down in 2009? In order to answer this what if question, let's put some context around this. Like, how did Six Flags get in a position to go bankrupt anyway? Six Flags had a very interesting history of owners. So many people bought and then sold Six Flags, including the likes of Time Warner, among others. But in 1998, Six Flags was sold to Premier. Premier added the 8 Six Flags parks to their collection that they already had, and they started adding coasters at a rapid rate. What do I mean by this? Well, in 1999, they added 21 coasters across all their parks, and in 2000, they repeated that. In the year 2000, they added 4 coasters to Six Flags Holland and 4 coasters to Six Flags Worlds of Adventure. This is unheard of, and it turned out to be a little too ambitious. And then from those 2 years of craziness, debt went up, interest went up, stock went down. It wasn't good. This strategy of expansion doesn't really make any sense, and it turned out it didn't work at all. When it came to new investments, Six Flags started to slow down over the 2000s decade, but ultimately, what they did in 1999, 2000, and a couple years following 2000, they couldn't recover from. So on June 13th, 2009, Six Flags filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. That being said, about a year later in April of 2010, they came out of bankruptcy and have since had a wonderful rebound. Since they've come out of bankruptcy, Six Flags has often been nicknamed the discount chain. And they have completely changed their philosophy. They went from adding 21 coasters a year to adding maybe 1 or 2 major thrill coasters and giving small stuff to the rest of the parks. This is one reason why Six Flags fell in love with RMC so much, because they can give you a really good roller coaster product with not nearly as much price attached to it as some other manufacturers. But back to the question at hand, what if Six Flags hadn't come out of their bankruptcy in 2009? There are a couple main factors I can think of relating to the parks directly. Number 1, I imagine they would have sold off as many of the parks as they could, as they did before their Chapter 11 bankruptcy. And number 2, we probably would have seen a couple of parks just close entirely, like what we saw with Kentucky Kingdom. But would there have been an Ed Hart to save all of those abandoned Six Flags parks? Probably not. Then, I also would think that we would have seen a lot of coasters relocated. Even though what Six Flags did at the turn of the century was crazy, there were a lot of quality coasters there. In some other parks, maybe a Cedar Fair park, maybe an independent park, would have definitely wanted to scoop 1 or 2 of those rides up. Then, continuing down this ever-lengthening rabbit hole, I wonder if RMC would have had the same success as they have today. Keep in mind that RMC and Six Flags have worked very closely together for a long time. In fact, RMC's first couple coasters were at Six Flags parks. So, would RMC have gotten a chance from a different park? Probably, because the product that they offered was so interesting. But would they have had the same amount of success? I don't know. Speaking of RMC, I think this is a good transition to element of the ride. What if a T-Rex was actually built? So what is an RMC T-Rex? So an RMC T-Rex is basically a bigger version of the company's Raptor coasters. The RMC Raptor is a single rail coaster that can do a bunch of crazy maneuvers in a small space. The RMC T-Rex takes that general design and makes it bigger. So I've heard RMC can make these coasters, in theory, up to 400 feet in the air, and instead of featuring single file seating, they have 2 across seating. This coaster idea has been out there for a long time, but as of now, as of this recording, no one has bought one yet. I really don't know how ready RMC is to build one of these coasters if someone gave them a call today, but the concept is still out there. So what if one of these coasters was built? That would be awesome. That would be a bucket list coaster for every coaster enthusiast. The question would then become, would this be the best roller coaster in the world? That would be an interesting discussion to have. These rides look like they could be really, really cool. Repent Daily. What if your amazing, awesome dad had never took you on your first roller coaster? So for reference, this comment is coming from my dad, and also, that would be kinda sad. We credit my first coaster as Cobra at Six Flags Discovery Kingdom, which used to be one of my favorite rides, and is still a pretty decent ride, but I know one thing for sure, if I never ridden a roller coaster, you would not be watching this video right now. HXNTZZ. What if Giovanola had never went under and B&M never was made? So once again, let's go back in history a little bit to answer this question. So the initials B&M stands for the 2 engineers that founded the company, Walter Balger and Claude Malabard, and they founded B&M in 1988, but before that they worked as engineers for Giovanola. Giovanola was often subcontracted to build Intamin's roller coasters. But in 1998, the two split off to form their own company, B&M. I didn't know this until very recently, but it's interesting to know that the intention of B&M as a company was not initially to build roller coasters. But they got a call from Six Flags Great America, built Iron Wolf, and off of that success have built tons of coasters worldwide. So I know this isn't how the question was structured, but since we're talking about B&M right now, let's ask the question, what if B&M never split off to form their own company, and hence we never got the roller coasters we got from them? One major question comes into my mind, and that's the inverted coaster. B&M was the first company to have an extreme roller coaster while hanging under the track. These rides are not only good on their own, but they're also very popular. There are lots of B&M invert roller coasters out there. These were the rides that paved the way for so many other inverted roller coasters by other manufacturers, i.e. Intamin, Vekoma, and Giovanola. More on Giovanola in a minute. Let's go back to B&M. If they never split off and formed their own company, we would not have a lot of the awesome coasters that we have today. So obviously in this scenario we would never know different, but B&M has provided a lot of quality and reliability to the theme park industry, which is why they've been so popular. It would certainly be a bummer if we didn't have this Swiss manufacturer. Giovanola for their part only built 3 coasters, but all of them were pretty legit. Goliath at Six Flags Magic Mountain and Titan at Six Flags Over Texas are both hyper coasters, and then they built an invert at Gold Reef City in Africa. For only building 3 coasters, this is a pretty bizarre set of 3. They're all super big and ambitious projects. That being said, when they went bankrupt, it didn't feel like we'd lost a whole lot just because they'd only built those 3 roller coasters. So if they hadn't gone bankrupt, I don't know, maybe they would have built some more hyper coasters, but honestly the B&M ones just look better. And perhaps they could have had a line of invert coasters and there would be a dozen Giovanola inverted coasters by now. I really don't know. The sample size for the company is just so small that it's tough to say. Similar to the B&M question is Zachary Roush. What if Intamin had never existed? I'll try not to be too repetitive here because I think a lot of what I said about the B&M point applies to the Intamin point here. That being said, it would really be a bummer because Intamin Amusement Rides has given us a lot of quality over the years. Their portfolio is expansive, and a lot of my top bucket list coasters come from Intamin. I mean, think about it. We wouldn't have rides like El Toro, T-Express, King de Ka, Formula Rosa, the list goes on. Now, if you really want to do a deep dive into Intamin, remember that Giovanola often was subcontracted to build Intamin's roller coasters, and from there, B&M got their start. So that raises another question. Man, some of these hypothetical situations are getting complicated. If Intamin hadn't existed, would Giovanola have been in the theme park industry? And then with that, would B&M have gotten their start at all? It's possible that B&M would still offer some other engineering products, like for example a rotating platform for a restaurant on top of a Swiss mountain, which was their first project, fun fact. But Intamin not only opened the door for those 2 companies, but they also have made tons of amazing roller coasters. So if they never existed, things would look a lot different in the theme park industry. We're down to our last couple what if questions now. Poke the meme dealer. What if Cedar Fair accepted SeaWorld's purchase offer? So if you didn't know, on February 2nd, 2022, so this is pretty recent, SeaWorld offered to buy Cedar Fair for $3.4 billion. It seemed like a long shot, and thankfully it didn't go through. Cedar Fair said it wasn't in the best interest of the company, and quite frankly, I don't know if it would have been the best interest for SeaWorld once they made the purchase. It seemed like a bold move. Quite frankly, it reminds me a lot of Six Flags at the beginning of the 2000s and in 1999, which, as we saw, didn't exactly work out for the company. I really do believe that both chains are better off that this deal did not go through. Because as far as Cedar Fair is concerned, obviously they would be out of the theme park market at that point. But for SeaWorld, that is a lot of parks to manage. In order to add a decent amount of attractions every year, I can't imagine how much debt SeaWorld would have gone into, but I guess if they were going to buy Cedar Fair for $3.4 billion anyway, I guess debt was not a big concern. I would actually be pretty worried about some of the lower tier Cedar Fair parks, i.e. Worlds of Fun, Dorney Park, Michigan's Adventure, and Valley Fair. I know Cedar Fair doesn't exactly treat these parks very well, but I don't know how SeaWorld would treat these parks. Would they give them some new investment, or would they continue to shun them, so to speak? That would have been fascinating, and it also would have been fascinating to see what SeaWorld would have done with parks that have close proximity to either A, a Six Flags park, or B, a SeaWorld park. Take King's Dominion versus Busch Gardens Williamsburg in Virginia. One way to get rid of your competition is buying it. So how much love would they have given King's Dominion? Or take California's Great America as another example with direct competition with Six Flags Discovery Kingdom. Keep in mind too that Cedar Fair sold the land that California's Great America sits on, and if SeaWorld owned that park, that likely wouldn't have happened. All these things would have been very interesting to see, and with that cash, would Cedar Fair have made a comeback and build new parks? Who knows? But ultimately, I think these chains are better off not going through with this deal. And with that, we are down to our final scenario. Stephen Boschers, what if Arrow never built X2 and then never went bankrupt? For some context, Aerodynamics in 2002 opened X at Six Flags Magic Mountain. X would be the world's first fourth dimension roller coaster, and right there we have an immediate impact. So with that, we wouldn't have B&M Wind Coasters or S&S Free Spins, at least probably not. Nothing like X had ever been done before, and along with being a fourth dimension coaster, the riders were on the side of the track instead of over or under it, hence the B&M Wing. So we probably wouldn't have those coaster models I just mentioned. X though was not without its issues, as you would expect for a prototype of this magnitude. On a minor note, one issue was that paint scheme. What were they doing? When the ride was modified to X2, the paint scheme got vastly better. But anyways, that's besides the point. This ride had a lot of technical issues, and because Arrow had to figure those out, and then Six Flags ended up suing Aerodynamics, it effectively led Arrow into bankruptcy. We talked about the models that were inspired by X or X2, but now let's turn our sights on Aerodynamics, a company that was really starting to turn the corner before X. They were no longer building corkscrew models, they were building some really interesting stuff, like Tennessee Tornado at Dollywood, for example, being one of the best coasters Arrow ever built. So if Arrow hadn't gone bankrupt when they did, I really think we would have seen a revolution of amazing aerodynamics roller coasters if Tennessee Tornado was any indicator. So overall, it's just sad that Aerodynamics went bankrupt when they did. But let me know what you think of all these what ifs in the comment section below, and I'll see you guys next time.